So JF Schwarzlose is a perfume brand. Could you please tell us a bit about the history of the brand?
JF Schwarzlose was invented basically in 1856 by a piano maker in Berlin, and he did create a so-called drugstore in central Berlin next to the workshop where he did also build his pianos. And he created actually this drugstore for his children because he had like 9 sons and 2 daughters, so he had a huge family, and this was planned for their future. And we thought, why did someone who built pianos also go into this field of perfumery and fragrances? And basically, if you deal with pianos, you deal with music and tonality, and it's very much the same if you talk about fragrances. You deal with tonality, composition, so it's very much linked, even though you might think it's not.
When did the brand become successful, and why?
Well, the brand was quite popular when they started. They had a really big competitor just next street, a very famous brand called Treu und Nuglisch. And this brand was also famous in Austria at that time, not only in Germany, in Berlin. But they were picked by the royal court in 1885. So they got the seal to be supplier to the royal court in Berlin, and this made them even more popular. And then in 1900 they even could buy up their big competitor in town. So this was quite a successful story of Schwarzlose.
But then you said in the 1920s they became really successful. What happened then?
Yeah, they were very successful throughout the period in the late 1900s. But then I think they managed to overcome the new political situation in the 20s, because they invented beautiful new creations. Like they had new creations done in a new spirit, not only flower fragrances but also fragrances with a name. Something like one fragrance was called Rendezvous at 8 o'clock. So it's very similar to let's say the French perfume houses which created Vol de Nuit or something like this. So fragrances which were more explaining a mood, which were explaining a whole story, and I think this made them successful. This was quite unique in Germany.
However, at some point the brand disappeared. Why was that?
I think in some regards because after war there was one family member who rebuilt the whole business, and who also rebuilt the old industry location. I don't know how you call it, the manufacturing site, which was bombed, and because it was still a small company, then in 1970 the city of Berlin asked the owner to move to a different area in Berlin, because this area where the factory was located was supposed to become just a residential area. So she then, it was a woman, Annie Köthner was her name, then was quite desperate, and she said, okay, I'm not going to rebuild the factory another time. I rebuilt it after war, but I'm not going to rebuild it a second time somewhere outside of Berlin. I'm too old for this. And then also she did not believe that her daughters could manage to continue the whole company. So she basically closed the business and just lived her lucky life.
And you are a designer. You design a lot of famous fragrances for Coty, for Procter & Gamble, for Puig and other companies. Now, what gave you the idea to put life back into this brand?
Well, it's not so much the design task, it's more the idea to, as a designer, not only to take care of the surface of a product, but also to look into what is inside the bottle. Because to do packaging for one of the most, let's say, for products which are not really tangible, like a fragrance, the bottle always has to express what's inside, and sometimes if I design a bottle, I don't know what's going to be the fragrance inside in the end. So this time I really wanted to put more focus on what is inside the bottle than the whole design, and this was interesting for me. It was actually a challenge to really look into the composition of the fragrance, how is it going to be manufactured, what kind of ingredients do come into the fragrance, what kind of fragrance oils. This was very interesting, and that's something which I can really support, because I now know what is in the bottle. It's not only my knowledge how I designed the bottle. You know, it's like that's why I did it.
What do you think is the most innovative bottle, the most innovative fragrance?
We have one fragrance, as I mentioned before. It's called Treffpunkt 8 Uhr, Rendezvous at 8 o'clock. It's very innovative in the sense that we took the old formula, we took what was in the old fragrance, a lot of vetiver, and then our perfumer came up with this beautiful idea to create a contrast with mango flower. So vetiver is a very deep, a very green note, and especially on this fragrance we use Cœur vetiver, which is the heart of vetiver. So it's very expensive, but it gets really interesting because mango is so contradictory to something green and grassy. So you have like this two different poles in a fragrance, and I think this is always important to have something which is new to your nose. That's innovation, I think. I think Treffpunkt 8 Uhr is a real innovation in the sense in the fragrance world.
So do you have regular new launches?
We try to. I mean, we want to take our time. We don't want to grow like fast, do 2 launches every year. We want to take our time to really look into what has been there, and sometimes it's not that easy because we now met the last, let's say, member of the family, and she was the one who was not supposed to take over the company by her mother, and she gave us old recipes because she was a trained nose, she was a perfumer. And she took notes from a couple of fragrances, but we also have a collection of original bottles which are sometimes sealed or which still have some fluids in there, and we want to take our time and look into what ingredients are interesting here from the past. How can we do a combination in the future? So it's not about every 3-month launch. It's more to sit back, look at the things, do it properly, or do something which is really an innovation rather than just doing something.
And then leather plays quite an important part for you in perfumery?
Well, leather is one of the very traditional fragrance notes. So leather used to come in the 18th century. Leather, when it was sold in Europe, it came from Russia, and the Russians had a very good manufacturing process for leather goods. It was really famous Russian leather, and they used some herbs to dry the leather, and so the leather had a very specific smell at that time. And Schwarzlose, like any other big fragrance house, had a leather note inspired by Russian leather, and they even called it Russian leather. So you probably know Chanel. They had also leather note called Cuir de Russe. There are Hermes leather fragrances out there. So leather is an interesting note, but if we want to play it under the name of Schwarzlose, we have to make it unique, we have to make it ownable, it has to link to Berlin somehow, it has to be interesting. We don't want to do just another leather note.
Will you be launching that this year?
Probably we'll do this in autumn this year, yeah.
And you already have some designs. How would you characterize the designs?
Well, I think it was like for us more an creative exploration. We, as I said before, the design is not really focused on this brand. We always want to add details or to play with details, so maybe we will have the bottle covered in a leather texture. Not sure about this yet. Maybe we do something leathery about the cap, but we don't want to create a bottle which does well. We want to stay minimal. Let's say we want to give hints about the fragrance through design, but we don't want to scream. That's it, basically.
And how is the brand distributed?
It's distributed only in private perfumeries. We have like I think 50 doors. So as you can see, it's not many. In Germany, we have like another 30 outside of Germany. And then we are looking at really specific places where we want to distribute. I mean, I think we need just to take our time, because it's like it's a passion, and it's more about passion than about making money at this point. So we want to take our time and do the things really with a lot of consideration.
Are you making money at the moment?
A little, yeah. So it's already, I mean, it's already good after 2.5 years to have like black numbers, but it's like, as I say, we don't do it predominantly to print dollars, but to, as I come from the industry, I think it's really a passionate project for me. It's not about money making. It's more about what can I do in terms of fragrance innovation. What other elements can I add? How can I do things different than the industry does them? Because I think many things are just very careless done.